Now, recently I featured the Mercedes 124 E-Class here on my channel. Right here is one of its distant successors, and some of you would probably identify this as the W212, except that it isn't. You see, the coupe version of the E-Class is designated C207. And why did Mercedes have such a different, unrelated code number for the chassis of its same generation E-Class sedan and coupe? Well, we have to dive a little deeper into the history of the E-Class coupe. Okay, so the history of the E-Class traces all the way back to the 1970s. Back then, Mercedes didn't even call it the E-Class. It was like their mid-sized sedan model. They call it the Mercedes-Benz 200 or 250 or 280, and then you had the two-door version, which they call it the Mercedes-Benz 200 CE or 250 CE or whatnot. So that, of course, continued to the W123 and eventually the W124. They all had a two-door counterpart to their regular bread and butter four-door models. Then, during the time of the W210 in 1996, Mercedes, they decided to mix it up a little. They introduced what was called the C, which wore the face of the E-Class, but had underpinnings of the C-Class. This continued with the 211 E-Class as well. So there were two generations of basically what was supposed to be the coupe counterpart of the E-Class with E-Class appearance, but C-Class underpinnings. Then came the era of the W212 E-Class, and here we have, this is the 207 E-Class coupe. Now, my suspicion is that when Mercedes developed this, the initial intention also would have been for this guy to continue on with the CLK badge. But somehow, somewhere along the line, somebody said, nope, we're going to call it the E-Class coupe. And here we are. Now, this is an E-Class coupe by name, an E-Class by styling, but like the CLK that came before, the platform underneath is from the C-Class. But nevertheless, there are, as I would show you later on, Mercedes did build enough cues, enough features in here that allow this model to justify its E-Class badge and positioning. And later on, when the 213 E-Class rolled along, finally Mercedes went back to build an E-Class coupe on an E-Class platform. Now, the C238 is an absolute personal favorite of mine amongst modern Mercedes models. That car, Mercedes absolutely nailed it in terms of the presentation, in terms of the positioning, in terms of the styling, packaging, and all that. You see, during the time of this E-Class coupe, as well as the C238, Mercedes was going head to head against the BMW 6 Series coupe, except that they were perhaps not competing directly. You see, the 6 Series, which was the E63 as well as the F12 generations, because they had the number 6 in their name, BMW had to position them above the 5 Series, and that meant they couldn't give the 6 Series the entry-level 5 Series powertrains. You can't have a 620i or a 628i. It just wouldn't go. But with the E-Class coupe, Mercedes had no such restrictions. They were free to have an E200 coupe, and in the case of what I'm driving here, an E250 coupe. So what we had at the time, the 6 Series versus the E-Class Coupe, it was a very fascinating dynamic because the 6 Series starts off at 3-liter engines upwards. The E-Class Coupe had models in the 3-liter engine range, but the bulk of their volume came actually in the sub 3-liter brackets. So you have like the E200s and the E250s were going well because there are people out there, all right, yes, they want the dynamism, the sportiness of a BMW. So yes, for these guys, you go for your 3-liter 640i, your V8 650i and all. But what if what you want is just a relaxed cruiser to go along, right? Something that gives you style and not too shabby performance? An E200 or E250 Coupe or E300 Coupe with a 2-liter turbo engine does the job very well. So the E-Class Coupe is a very uniquely, very cleverly positioned product that Audi had no answer to it, Volvo had no answer to it, Lexus with the RCF, well, a bit of a hit and miss. And BMW with the 6 Series, well, it's competing at too high up a power band. So that leaves the E-Class Coupe in a very sweet niche of its own. And the 6 Series also was in a very sweet niche of its own. But BMW decided to pull the plug from the 6 Series Coupe and gave us the 6 Series Gran Turismo, which on its own is a fabulous car, but somehow it was a bit of a waste to have sacrificed the 6 Series Coupe product concept for that. And now, as the W213 E-Class retires and makes way for the W214, Mercedes inexplicably pulled the plug on the E-Class Coupe, leaving us with the CLE, which in concept basically goes back to the CLK positioning. And the question I have is, why? Why? Right? The E-Class Coupe was such a fantastically positioned product. Mercedes had that sweet niche carved for themselves, and now they are walking away from it. But the good news with Mercedes going with the CLE is that those of you who own this C207 E-Class Coupe and the C238 E-Class Coupe that follow, well, you guys are in possession of something truly, truly special. So now, after 2 successive generations of the 4i look, Mercedes evolved the look further by, well, first making the 4 eyes squared, and then later on in the facelift of this model generation, they eliminated the 4-eyed look altogether and made it into one single headlight unit again. Now, this particular unit, as you would see from a certain cues, firstly, the shape of the number plate tells you that this is a Japanese parallel import, and this hockey stick style daytime running lights indicate to us that this is the first batch, probably 2009 or 2010 year of manufacture example. And this E-Class was also the last one where the classic Mercedes grille was a popular choice, at least with the sedan model. Here in the Coupe, they made it standard with the avant-garde grille design because the Coupe, after all, is to project a sportier image. And traditionally, even in the old days, Mercedes Coupes have always had the avant-garde grille design with the large central star on the grille. So now, proportion-wise, the C207 is a very handsome car. And like the sedan model, the 212, there is this distinctive character line that pays tribute to the classic Mercedes ponton of the 1930s. And once again, it is quite a waste that Mercedes eliminated this characterful design line when they facelifted the 212 generation E-Class. After that, It was just a straight line here that runs parallel to this one as well. And I think it caused the side profile of the car to lose a bit of character. So now in the older days, the E-Class sedan and E-Class coupe pretty much had the same taillight design. Here in this model generation, it is different shaped, but the details are the same. So if you park this next to the same generation E-Class sedan, you will recognize them immediately as counterparts of each other, unlike more recent iterations where the rear ends of the sedan as well as the coupe look totally different. Now, two things about this generation of the E-Class coupe that I really like. Number one is that when I get in, I start the engine, this little machine here pushes the seat belt out to make it more convenient for me to buckle up. And secondly, this window also lowers, so it's a totally open space here, B-pillar free, and this gives the E-Class coupe just that added grand touring character to it. This is a sign that the E-Class coupe is a higher up model because this feature is not available in the C-Class. Now, one thing that grabs my eye when I open the doors is this metal plate here that's available on both sides of the car. This piece here, it really gives the E-Class coupe that slightly old school feel to it. And let me just show you the back. Now, I just have to point out that these leather mats are not original. They are an enhancement by the owner. So here at the back, I'm 170 centimeters tall, and I quite like how they scooped out this area to ensure that there is above headroom. Now, behind here, there is good enough space for me to cross my legs, and lean angle is, well, it's a bit upright to be honest up here, but it's not uncomfortable. It's not a very claustrophobic space. And once again, I appreciate that this opening window here, it really makes this rear section look and feel a lot more airy. And what's more, you've got rear blowers for the rear seats. Okay, you've got a tray here as well as a slidable lid that reveals a couple of cup holders. Now, I think I've said this before, but amongst the modern Mercedes models, I've always been partial to the 204 and the 212 generation models. The reason being is that, well, these cars have aged a little, but there is just that feeling of solidness you get, that sense of engineering integrity that the engine, the drivetrain, the chassis, they are all working together as one. They are breathing as one. Now, don't expect this C207 here to corner or to handle with the kind of dynamism or verve of a BMW 3 Series. It does not. It does not. But it is competent. Whatever people say about, Mercedes, they drive like boats and all that, not true with this generation of cars. The 204 C-Class, the 212 E-Class, and the 207 E-Class Coupe, well, they drive competently, as competent enough that, I feel confident taking fast sweeping bends, right? Secure, knowing that the car is on top of things. And interestingly enough, the steering, the controls are actually pretty communicative. You know what's happening around around the car. Now, and also in terms of engines, now we always say that this era Mercedes has a bit of a confusing engine strategy because they have this 1.8 liter turbo that powers this E250 here, and they have that lazy 3 liter V6 with 230 horsepower that powers the E300, and poof, suddenly it's a 3.5 liter direct injection engine. So there is very little middle ground escalation in terms of available power. The powertrain catalog, there is that very big gap between the 1.8 CGI and the 3.5 V6. But that being said, the 1.8 CGI engine here is a peach of a powertrain. It pulls so enthusiastically, it revs with it relative to a turbo, in the context of a turbo engine, very creamy smoothness, all right? In fact, I rate this engine as much better than the 2-liter that they use in the 212 facelift and continued with in the 205 as well as the 213. Like you see right now, I'm going on this curving road, right? This car is an absolute delight to drive, both in terms of its handling and its power delivery. It's just a well-engineered car. It gives you the feeling that all the engineers, they work together as a team and they've honed and fine-tuned every aspect of the car's driving behavior. That is a feeling that, quite sadly, I don't experience in the newer crop of Mercedes vehicles. If you are talking about the driving experience, you want to get a sweet driving experience, the 204 C-Class and the 212 E-Class generations are absolutely the cars to go for. The used car market, the 204 C-Class, the 212 E-Class, as well as this 207 C-Class E-Class Coupe, they are going for relatively attainable prices and they represent fantastic value for money purchase. Now, that being said, because it's a Mercedes, if you were to compare against an equivalent age BMW, the Mercedes will always command a higher value for the same spec and year, typically, especially this model generation, simply because consumers know, buyers know that these cars are absolutely rock solid. This example here, more than 10 years old, 130,000 kilometers on the clock. Besides some surface wear and tear, it still drives beautifully, thanks mainly, of course, due to it having an owner who cares deeply for the car. But this is a car that holds together well. It is a car that is reliable and offers you a still relatively modern driving experience in terms of performance, refinement, as well as, well, features on board. So definitely worth looking for in the used car market. And the E-Class Coupe in particular, as I mentioned earlier, because Mercedes is no longer making the E-Class Coupe for the next generation, this is now elevated to something of a more special standing. The C238 after this, even more so, but this one is also now becomes more special because Mercedes with the CLE has basically went back to the former CLK concept. So definitely this is something really worth checking out in the used car market. Or if you are an owner of one and you would like to share your experience with one of these, I invite you to drop a line in the comment section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.